This week on Diplomatic Channel. Nigeria celebrates Diaspora Day in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. We'll be talking to a former diasporan on the challenges of being outside the country and moving back home. Us will all be well now that Mr. Boris Johnson occupies number 10 Downing Street in the UK. Former President, Nigeria Community Association in Bradford speaks on the type of leadership to expect. That's Diplomatic Channel in a wrap. We'll take a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles, and we'll be right back.
Hong Kong on Sunday saw a second day of violent clashes between police and pro-democracy demonstrators despite a ban on protest from the police. Police fired tear gas and rubber bullets at protesters trying to reach the Chinese government's office. Tens of thousands of demonstrators took over streets near Saiwan and Causeway Bay on Hong Kong Island, also angry at alleged police brutality. Hong Kong has seen 8 consecutive weekends of anti-government and pro-democracy protests. It is ranked as one of the safest cities in the world, but recent protests have been followed by violent clashes between demonstrators, police and masked men wielding sticks suspected of being criminal gang members. Police in Moscow have detained more than 1,000 people at a rally in one of the biggest crackdowns in years. Demonstrators were dragged away from the city hall as security forces used batons against the crowd. People were protesting against the exclusion of opposition candidates from local polls. The opposition say they were barred for political reasons. Some of the candidates banned from standing in the September 8 election had been detained earlier. 8 senior military officers are to be charged in Sudan with crimes against humanity over their alleged part in the killing of protesters on June 3rd. Government prosecutors announced the charges after investigating the massacre when at least 87 people died in the capital, Khartoum. Opposition activists say the number of deaths was closer to 130.
Welcome back. Last Thursday, July 25th, Nigeria marked Diaspora Day in the nation's capital city, Abuja, under the auspices of the Nigeria Diaspora Commission, led by its chairman, Mrs. Abike Dabiri-Erewa. The purpose of Diaspora Day is to recognize the contribution of Nigerians in diaspora towards national development. Diaspora Day came about after the creation of Nigerian in Diaspora organization in 1999. NIDO, as it was known then, was meant to provide a critical mass to ignite conscious participation by the diaspora in Nigeria's development. In July 2005, the administration of Chief Olusegun Obasanjo declared that July 25th every year be recognized as Diaspora Day in Nigeria, a day for all Nigerians to remember and appreciate the contributions of their expatriate nationals in the country's development. The first Diaspora Day anniversary was celebrated July 25th, 2006, in conjunction with the 3 Science and Technology conferences for that year. It was attended by 200 registered Nigerian expatriates. However, things went quiet for a really long while, up until August 24th, 2015, when it was celebrated again. Last year, Diaspora Day was declared open on July 25th by Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo. It was organized by the Nigerian National Volunteer Service, established also by the Obasanjo administration, the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, and Nigerians in Diaspora organization worldwide. The event held for 2 days. The same event was replicated on Thursday last week by the Office of the Secretary of the Federation and what is now known as the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, NIDCOM. At the event, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, said $25 billion was remitted by Nigerians living and working outside the country, representing 83% of the national budget. These monies, he said, have come in form of social security funds to families in paying school fees, hospital bills, feeding allowances, investments in housing and estate development, hospital projects, schools and commercial enterprises. He says there is need, though, to galvanize this into an investment fund for development. According to Business Day, Nigerians in diaspora have in the past 14 years supported the local economy with cumulative remittances in excess of $277.3 billion. The highest remittances have come from Nigerians in the United States, in Switzerland, in Germany, Russia, and China. Nigerians are among Africans said to be the best educated U.S. immigrants. The chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Mrs. Abike Dabiri-Erewa, has called the Nigerians in diaspora to contribute to the development of the country.
Let's have an accurate database of Nigerians in the diaspora. We're going to work on that. Good enough, we have a diaspora policy that has just been articulated. Very soon we'll be presenting it to the SGF for our transmission to the Federal Executive Council. So SGF, sir, we rely on you to have a very good policy that we'll be presenting to you very soon. So the diaspora policy will guide all diaspora engagement. It's holistic, it's thorough, it is deep, and it's going to be very, very efficient and effective.
Nigeria is not the first country to be celebrating Diaspora Day. Countries around the world have been doing the same, some for years and others even more recently. I know we're used to hearing about the maltreatment of Nigerians outside of the country and hardly ever focus on the good that comes from these areas. But as many of us know, Nigerians are doing great things in other countries. And interestingly, many are interested in coming back home to replicate the successes here also. But like you would with the weather, waiting to see the conditions are right before making the move. In any case, one of them made the move back home about 5 years ago, having spent more than 30 years in the United States. You know him better as a climate change expert, but Dr. Jonas Sawa is currently Board of Trustees member and legal and strategic advisor to Association of Nigerian American Professionals in Nigeria, ANAPIN. He joins us now from our studio in Abuja. Dr. Sawa, thank you for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So let's begin. Talk to us about your time in the U.S. and when you made the decision to return to Nigeria.
I left Nigeria in 1986, and the intention was to go there and study, gain some work experience, and then come back to Nigeria. So even before I left, I had the intention of coming back to Nigeria. I never meant to live there forever. And that is what you will find with most Nigerians who have gone abroad. When they leave Nigeria to go and study, they are not intending to be there for 15, 20, 25 years, as I did. Sometimes it's because of what is happening in Nigeria that delays the return of some Nigerian diaspora professionals. So I wanted to come back, but in my own case, the imperative to come back to Nigeria became even more pronounced because when I went to the US, the environment was still conducive. You could find work. You could work and support yourself in school. We didn't have the restrictions that we see now. So when I wanted to do my doctorate, I knew that I needed help. So I applied for scholarships. It just so happens that in the school in Boston, where I wanted to go, I was living in Boston at that point. So the criteria to get full scholarship was very stringent. They only take about 1% of the incoming class. In this particular instance, just 4 people out of 400 could get full scholarship. So I applied looking at my academic record and my desire to do good in Africa. So they felt that I deserved that scholarship. So in trying to apply, I prayed to God. I said, God, if you make this happen for me, it's such a rarity for an African child to get this scholarship in the US competing with Americans, that I would use the knowledge that I have garnered to do good in Africa, that I would return and teach and do things that will impact the youth. So for me, coming back was a covenant. I had to do it.
Wow, what an interesting story. So was it difficult making the move, and what were the challenges of returning to Nigeria?
Yes, as with any diaspora returnee, there are always challenges, and those challenges are manifold. First one is security. Second one is the lack of infrastructure. then if you want to do business, access to funding is difficult. Also, there are some bureaucratic bottlenecks along the way. In the United States, where I live, if you want to open a business, to register a business, it takes a few hours. You don't even have to go to any office. You can do it online. And this has been the case for 20 years. But here, you may have to spend 2 weeks just trying to register your business. Then when you register the business, you have to qualify the business to do contracts or business with government. That also eats a lot of money, a lot of time. So those are some of the challenges that we face coming back. But the current administration is trying to address some of these challenges.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, from the time you came back to Nigeria and now, have there been noticeable changes, to these challenges that you saw the first time you arrived?
Yes, we are making progress. First thing I want to point out is when I left, we were under a dictatorship, just like some of my colleagues. Now we have a democracy that seems to be sustained and seems to be very, very beneficial in terms of press freedoms, in terms of personal freedoms, right of association, and even the right to move around the country and do business. So that is a major boost to the effort to make sure that we have a conducive environment. The second thing that just happened this year, and I'm very excited about this, the government has finally established the Diaspora Commission, headed by Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa, who has been in this sector for many, many years, has spearheaded a lot of wonderful things happening. So I'm excited about that. Just this year, it's come on stream. They're putting the structures together as we speak. Bureaucratic bottlenecks is getting the attention that it needs. I know that the Vice President is spearheading an effort to make sure that doing business in Nigeria is becoming easier than in the past. So those are commendable things that we're seeing.
Now, billions are remitted by Nigerians in diaspora each year. You're also one of those who've been remitting part of those billions to the country. Do you really get to a point where these remittances could be a hindrance to development back home?
No. We have seen time and time again in other countries the impact of diaspora remittance and diaspora input in their development. So it is always a boost to the development of a nation when you have the diaspora coming back, bringing back money into the system, bringing back their experience, bringing back their expertise, bringing back their connections abroad. That always is a boost. In this particular instance in Nigeria, we have about 15 million to 20 million people in the diaspora, depending on the record that you look at. And they are funneling $25 billion, US dollars, into the Nigerian economy every year.
Dr. Sawa, I'm sure that you know that there has been a large pool for a lot of Nigerians outside the country, basically due to these challenges that you've mentioned. No one can be blamed for them, though. But people are seeking better opportunities. People are seeking a better standard of living, better opportunities outside of the country. What changes has ANAPIN brought to the situation in helping the government to realize the loss that is being factored by these migrations?
Well, I want to caution those who are going abroad. As much as diaspora engagement is beneficial, and sometimes people can go outside and actualize themselves in terms of education, in terms of job opportunities, in terms of career development. The climb out there is different from what we faced in the 1980s when we left, or even in the 1970s and maybe beginning of the 1990s. The situation is very different now. A lot of the Western countries do not want African migrants anymore. If you look what is happening politically, when a particular party adopts the platform of anti-immigration, a particular candidate, that candidate tends to do very well, and sometimes they will win. It's the Trumpist notion that is sweeping the world now, that we don't want any more immigrants.
Dr. Jonas Sawa, thank you again for speaking with us on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
When we come back after the break on the program,
if we get rid of the backstop, whole and entire, then we're making a lot of progress.
the new occupant of number 10 Downing Street in London is convinced he's the man to take Britain out of the European Union. We'll be talking to former president of Nigerian communities in the UK, Mr. Wale Bakari, next. Welcome back. Britain's new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has wasted no time since assuming office last week, putting together a government and sending a message to the European Union. He said Britain will leave on or before October 31st, the deadline given by the Union for Britain's exit with or without a deal. But he's shown he will fight to get a deal. He's already begun arguments surrounding the Irish backstop, despite the EU saying they will not accept changes to Mrs. Theresa May's deal.
If we get rid of the backstop, whole and entire, then we're making a lot of progress. That would be my answer. And as for whether my friends across the channel are warming to me, well, I've always had very good relations. I'm sometimes slightly mystified by some of the obiter dicta that I read and some of the off-the-record commentary that I see. I have very friendly relations. I've with other EU foreign ministers already and with EU leaders as well. And we will build on them. And I want to stress to everybody that the approach of the UK government is not going to be disengaged or aloof or waiting for them to come to us. We are going to try to solve this problem.
Now, he also seems to know what the people want. And according to Mr. Johnson, it's not another general election. Oh no, he won't be walking in the steps of Mrs. May on that one. He says all Britons want now is delivery on Brexit. Meanwhile, his friend across the pond, US President Donald Trump, says the US and the UK are already working on a US-British free trade agreement. After the regular congratulations, of course. Congratulations have also come from President of Host to Britain's largest mission in Africa, Muhammadu Buhari. President Buhari congratulated Mr. Johnson as the new Prime Minister and commended the now past Prime Minister Theresa May for providing visionary leadership in the country. Let's remember, it was just last year that Mrs. May was in Nigeria during a short tour of 3 African countries. And as she promised then, Brexit will not impact negatively on UK-Nigeria relations. And while we watch to see how things play out over the next few weeks, I have joining me now the past president of Nigeria Community Association, Bradford, and retired immigration lawyer, Mr. Wale Bakari. He's in Bradford. Mr. Bakari, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you.
So, what does the Nigerian community in the UK make of the recent changes to the political landscape in Britain?
Well, we all welcome the recent changes, and we are believing it will have good impact on our lives and our community in the UK. We just have to work with the new Prime Minister, Mr. Johnson, in order to achieve his goal. He has set out a very, very good various goals that are really will be of beneficial to the communities, including the Nigerian communities. One of those goals is, as he has just come into the position a few days ago, he has already established and granted a post-study program for all the foreign students of non-EU in the UK. That means that the student can now, after the completion of their university education, they have right to work for 2 years under the Tier 4 arrangement. That is a very good news, which has been welcomed by communities. Also, among his manifesto, he has actually said that he's going to look at granting amnesty for illegal immigrants who've been in this country for 10 years. Now, that's another way that we, the community, can benefit, some part of us, in the community will be able to benefit from that. Now, that is a permanent stay in the UK, which is not very easy to come back.
Wow. Well, those are really noble, projections for his government. And that really deviates from what the U.S. is doing. The U.S. has been trying to get rid of illegal immigrants, and Boris Johnson seems to be doing the exact opposite of that, as something former President Barack Obama did during his time in the White House. But do you think that Brexit will be a good thing for Britain and for Britain-Nigeria relations?
Yes, I think it will be. From what we can see, Boris Johnson wants to do exactly opposite of what the President Trump is doing by getting rid of illegal immigrants. Now, don't forget that the issue of illegal immigrants was because of the resignation of the former UK Home Secretary. So the government really wants to sort of try and improve their image in this area by looking at the problem of the people. That is why Boris Johnson is actually going into the community now to ask what they want, and then he will rubber stamp them.
So will he be a good thing? Will he be that bridge to help bring together, to help cement the relations between Nigeria and the UK? And will he also be the one to take Britain out of the EU? Do you have confidence in him?
Yes, I did actually. I did actually have confidence in him, because what we need to know is that Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister, was the brain behind the Brexit, one of the brain behind the Brexit, with working with Nigel Farage then. So yes, I can see a lot of good things coming up, coming out of this, because Brexit itself, if you remember, if it can go through, the purpose of Brexit is to give the Britain, the independence of making their own decision. Now, that is a big thing. If you can make your own decision, then you'll be able to deal with all those other aspects which is affecting your community.
I've tried to sample a few opinions, and many think that Mr. Johnson is just the leader that Britain needs to make Brexit happen now. I mean, he's the leader for up until October 31st. But do you see him as a leader in the long term, even after this whole Brexit scenario?
Well, again, yes, I can see, I think to be having confidence in him, because it's a very bold, he speaks his mind, and provided that the communities as a whole work with him, I'm sure that it will go a long way.
As a Nigerian in diaspora, I know you've lived many years in the UK. What do you make of the federal government's efforts back here towards integrating the diaspora community?
Okay, to be honest with you, I have no idea of what the Nigerian government has been doing to sort of, get the people from the diaspora involved, people from the diaspora. But what I can say is that the federal government needs to engage and liaise with the Nigerian communities in the UK through its High Commissioner in the UK here, and work with every branch. For example, at the NANC, which is the umbrella organization for our own Nigerian Community Association in Bradford, NCAP. Now, if they can work together, then you can they can define the goal that will be acceptable and be of beneficial to everyone, everybody. Now, that can be done, like I said, through the Nigerian Commission. It depends on how the Nigerian Commission presented us as well. That is how we will be able to have more respect from the host country, in the way that they treated us. So, well, my comment there is that both the federal government and ourselves, the Nigerian communities here, should be working together to achieve the same goal.
Mr. Bakari, thank you so much for speaking with us on Diplomatic Channel. I look forward to more conversations with you in the course of the year. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
This is our stop on the show today. Thanks again for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.